Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist. After my first video on Heated Rivalry, which was called Heated Rivalry Why It Hits So Hard Psychologically, after I did that video, I had more psychological points come up for me that I wanted to expand on. And I also just wanted to acknowledge the hundreds of people that commented, that inserted their own comments in that video and really kind of started the most fascinating conversation. We're talking about people commenting from all over the world. People of also all different ages talking about how this particular show triggered memories and different experiences that they had. And the comments in the comments section just really blew me away. And I really wanted to also expand on a few of the points from all the viewers because really there was some amazing stuff in there. I was so struck by the insight, by the wisdom that you could see in those comments. And you know what? I just kept thinking, reading comment after comment, when is your YouTube channel coming out? I talked a little bit in my original video about how this show, I think, really triggered a lot of memories for people. Memories that really have been, for some people, boarded up. Boarded up for many, many years. And yet, I also think that you see in the comment section on the original video, you see people talking about how this show triggered some of their own memories, memories maybe they hadn't thought about in many, many, many years. And that is such a testament to a quality show when it can elicit, it can really induce in us thoughts and feelings, some of which we may not consciously have even known were really just on the tip of our consciousness. So I just wanted to mention that. Another thing that I was really struck by in the comments was how people were commenting on where they were watching from, people from all corners of the world, and not just geographic corners. People also talked about their own experiences being in completely different age ranges. Young people commented, people who were older, and they talked about how this show brought up certain experiences for them and maybe made them think about them in a different light. Reading and going through all those comments and seeing you all connect with each other about the different comments you shared, it really was just a beautiful reminder for me about how connected so many of us are in spirit, how connected, maybe even in soul, many of us are, regardless of geography. The reactions that this show is causing in people are really special, no doubt. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to talk about a few more points that the show kind of brings up, psychological points that I think are worth thinking about, worth us talking about and looking at. One of them has to do with music. Music in this show, I thought, pushed the emotional intensity in the show so much farther. It was seamless. I thought at some points it just seemed breathtakingly seamless the way the music connected so perfectly with the storyline. And one point that I'm thinking of exactly is in episode 4, the song, if you hear the lyrics being played over and it's "This Is Not Enough." Okay, so I have to look at my notes here because I looked this song up. I thought it was that good. So the original song was Tattoo. Okay, this was a 2002 song, All the Things She Said. And then Harrison, who is a London based artist, redid it. And that's the version that we hear in this show, just sort of on repeat. It's almost haunting. This is not enough. Now, what's happening in that scene at the time is Shane and Ilya are at a nightclub and they're out with different people and they are trying to make it work. They are trying to move on and really trying to tell themselves that they don't love the person that they love. And you just keep hearing that haunting lyric, "This is not enough." Something about the melody, the song, also just the scene that it was in. Sometimes a nightclub, there can be so many people around, and yet all of the intensity and the stimulation and the music and all the people can actually magnify sometimes how somebody can feel in that setting so alone. But that use of that song just especially just blew me away, and I think that a lot of other viewers had a really strong reaction to that scene too. Another point that I wanted to share that I didn't think about until after I had recorded that first video, and that was a little bit more about emotional unavailability. So I talked about emotional unavailability in the first video. But one of the things that I thought more about later was I thought about episode 3. So if you remember in episodes 1 and 2, you get a lot of Shane and Ilya. In fact, you really think, if you don't know the book series that this is based on, you really think that that will probably be every single episode of the 6 episodes we get in that season. Okay. And yet, episode 3 happens, and you're kind of starting the episode and you're thinking, well, where's Shane? Where's Ilya? These two characters that you have focused on so much in the first 2 episodes. And really, they are not the focus in episode 3 at all. The storyline completely veers to other characters. And so, what I thought about later is more about that term emotional unavailability. And I just wondered if there was any directorial intention, if it was maybe a motivation for the director to try to induce in the viewer, to try to make the viewer actually miss Shane and Ilya. So I wondered if that was actually purposeful in any way, because basically what you get is 2 intense, incredibly intense, emotionally and physical episodes with Shane and Ilya in episodes 1 and 2. And then episode 3, nothing. And so what I realized is if we look at that sequentially, what we actually get is we get sort of like the same kind of experience that both Shane and Ilya in some ways had for each other. All of that rush of closeness, right? And then all of a sudden, nothing. That episode 3 actually rendered that couple emotionally unavailable. And I just wondered if there may have been any purpose on the part of the director to create that chasm so that we wanted them more, so that we missed those characters more. And then it made the reunion in episode 4 even sweeter. So you watching, you viewing this, did you maybe think that was possible? Do you think there's any possibility that that was on purpose? I do know that, they were really trying to set up a storyline that would be important later, but I just wondered if maybe people had any thoughts on that. Another factor that I wanted to talk about is the issue of consent. Checking in with your partner when you're being physical together. The issue of asking, is this okay? Is it okay to go further? I think this is really such an important point. And somebody made this comment in the comment section of the original video that a show that includes consent in this way actually ramped up the emotional intimacy and closeness between these two characters. And it's something that we usually don't get to see in TV and film. So really, I think it is possible that that factor alone really created this sense of closeness and trust, obviously between the two characters, but also brought out our own wishes as viewers for a similar kind of respect and trust in physical relationships. Another factor that I want to talk about is what I would call the rewatching factor. So, a lot of people are reportedly watching this series again, not just once, but a second time. And then some are even watching it more times. And so, psychologically, what does that mean? Well, I think, first of all, because of the short number of episodes, and it packs such an emotional punch, those few 6 episodes that we have, I think there's a really natural feeling that the viewing audience misses them. So I think a part of the rewatching is simply just viewers wanting to continue that sense of connection. And then interestingly, when a series is as good as this is, I think that there are so many different things. There's so much going on. There's so many different layers that are addressed in this TV series that one can pick up some things watching the next time that they maybe didn't see the previous time. So it's just really interesting. The show is dynamic enough and rich enough that people are able to pull out different things when watching it again. There is that much stimulation. There are that many different parts of the show, that many different things going on, that many different types of emotions that get referenced and that we see the viewers feel. That, if for viewers, it's like watching it anew when they watch it again. And actually, I want to talk about a kind of metaphor that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this issue. And that's, think about, for example, when you're really, really, really hungry, even starving, and you eat food. You're not really enjoying the food. But think about actually when you're not that hungry, okay, and you're eating something delicious. You have the luxury then to savor it, to really appreciate the flavor, to notice all the different points of something that you're eating. And I think the show is good enough and complex enough that that's really what rewatching for a lot of people is about. Next time when they watch, wanting to savor it, really take it in. Some of the finer points that maybe they were too sort of hungry, so to speak, to notice the first time they watched it. Another factor that I thought about, and I want to expand on, this is something that people really made a lot of comments about in the original video, and that was people commenting on their age. And you saw people of all different ages talking about how this show really affected them. One of the things that I was thinking is about the intensity that you see, the desire that you could see that each of these characters, Shane and Ilya, had for each other. The desire was written all over their face. It was so intense. And one of the things that's possible is, I think, think about different viewers in their different ages as they could potentially view this show. Somebody in their 20s, for example, in so many ways will feel like they have their whole life ahead of them. And of course, so many future experiences are waiting for them, romantic and otherwise, they probably tell themselves. And yet, think on the other hand about somebody who is much older. Think about somebody who is, decades into their life. Okay. And so, one of the things I think is possible is that viewers who are on the older side, I think it's possible that some of the intense moments between these two characters, Shane and Ilya, looking at them with that intensity, and even some of the other characters as well, I think the series can provoke this sort of question, this sort of flash thought of, when was the last time somebody looked at me like that? When was the last time somebody looked at me and wanted me or desired me in that way? I think that this show can really bring out that feeling in a lot of older viewers. And so that's one thing, that's sort of like the age factor. But on the other hand, and you actually heard this too in the comments section in the video, is that it's not just age, it could also be for people who are on the lonelier side now, or people who feel like they don't have that sense of love and desire and connection in their life. And so people forgetting their age, even could be young people, but who don't have that now, this show could hit so hard psychologically because it reminds them what is missing, what they don't have, what they desperately want, and probably even feel like they need. So I just wanted to share that. I thought that was really worth kind of thinking more about. You can let me know, do you think that this show triggers that sense of, when was the last time someone looked at me like that? Next, I would be so remiss if I didn't acknowledge another point that I think is so important, is people's experience in the gay rights movement, and also people's experience today in cultures all over the world where there is not acceptance like there is in some countries. Okay. Now, I think it's really important. And some people commented on this in the original video. They shared their own experience where they are and how it is they live in a place where there are certain laws that are in effect, where they live in a place where they do not feel that accepted. Also, some people talked about just how this show is a reminder for them about just how hard so many people fought for the rights of LGBTQ plus individuals. That this show is such an emblem of, in some ways, the fairy tale, in some ways, of how far we can come as a community. One factor that I haven't talked about yet is secret keeping. Secret keeping, the psychological cost of secret keeping. And I thought that this show did a really good job of exposing just how heavy the weight can be of secret keeping. You really saw that, I think, especially with Ilya. And I think that actually there's so much psychology research that shows that keeping secrets can actually lead to negative mental health outcomes and even physical health outcomes. Secret keeping can take such a toll. And so I think you really see this embrace toward the end with these characters of them shedding their secrets. And I just imagine that for many, many viewers, that was a part of why watching this show was so intense, because so many viewers have shed their own secrets and really come to become more accepting of themselves over time. I have just a few more points. One of the points that I loved so much is one of the commenters in the chat made a really insightful point, something that I had not thought about. And that is one of the reasons that the commenter felt that this show hit so hard psychologically was because you could sense, the viewer could actually sense just how deeply the filmmakers must have loved the original source material. Okay, because this again is based on a series of books. And the commenter talked about how this actually feels, watching it actually feels like a Harlequin romance, okay? And that the filmmakers didn't try to water down in any way some of that wanting and the desire that is so clear, it almost feels like you can touch it in the show. I thought that was just such a fascinating point and something to think about. What about the factor of the little physical touches that we saw between Shane and Ilya? Not the really overt physical gestures, but all the tiny ones that spoke volumes. Their fingers creeping towards each other to hold hands, to touch each other on the beach, or playing footsie underneath the table. Those tiny little moments, the show did such a good job of showing how emotionally intense those moments felt for each one of those characters, even though the gestures itself were so tiny and seemingly insignificant. In reality, in their hearts, in the hearts of Ilya and Shane, they were not insignificant at all. Another point that I want to make is about unspoken words in their relationship. In that original video, I talked about all the unspoken words sometimes that go on in a romantic relationship. And I just want to acknowledge one of the commenters in the original video made such a fascinating point about specifically the text messages between these two. And you saw this a lot with Shane. Text messages, first of all, I have never seen a show or a movie where the text messages are such an integral point to the entire show. You really wouldn't grasp this show in exactly the same way if you weren't there for every single message. I myself found myself, I didn't want to miss a single text. Okay, that's how important they were, how just the littlest text said so much. But one of the things that was so cool about this show was how the show really took you through the exact thinking for Shane, for example. There was, you could see him start to text message, and he would start his text and he would write something, and then he would delete, and then he would write again, and it would show him deleting again. And in those moments, the show did such a good job of, it was like you were in his brain. It took you into his brain to understand just how loaded, how high stakes some of those moments felt. Some of those unspoken moments, though, again, that this show did such a great job. And the text messages, I thought, were such a good vehicle for that. All right, just two more points I want to make. One is a super quick one. Hands down, I'm pretty sure my favorite comment in that original video is the individual who shared that I think that they were watching from Turkey, and they said that actually their name actually means yearning in their language. I talked so much about yearning in that first video and how this show is just full of it, right? And that's part of why it packed such an emotional punch. Well, anyhow, that commenter, hands down, definitely took the trophy for best comment. All right, but the last comment that I want to make has to do with something that I really thought was a really kind of interesting thing to think about. And that's, one commenter talked about the movie Brokeback Mountain. And Brokeback Mountain, of course, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger, that was, in many ways new for its time. And many people talked about how that movie really resonated with them. And yet this particular commenter shared some thoughts that I could relate with myself as a viewer. Brokeback Mountain wasn't for me as a viewer something that really clicked so much. And it certainly didn't have the emotional impact that I thought Heated Rivalry did. And so, my question to you all is, why do you think that is? Or for some of you, maybe it did. Maybe did you find Brokeback Mountain and Heated Rivalry equally emotionally intimate in different ways? Or did you feel like one more than the other? They're very different, but I really sense that there was this emotionally honest and raw component to Heated Rivalry that I didn't get from Brokeback Mountain. But for you viewers, it's just something to think about, all right? Well, those are some of my kind of additional thoughts that I had on Heated Rivalry. I know that we'll all be waiting for more episodes, and I hope you all have a good one, everybody. I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist.